It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Hope everyone's having a great Wednesday. Quick show for us today as we have Maryland hoops coming up. Who the Terps got tonight, Anthony? I forgot to double check that.
So the Rooster pronounces it Ohio State.
Why?
I don't know. I thought it was Ohio State.
And considering I was just in that state, and in fact, I was just in Columbus, I think you have it correct.
Ohio, right?
Ohio. I know Chris has some family there as well. So I'm sure there's a reason behind it. But it is Ohio State.
Yes, not Ohio.
Ohio. O-H. Oh, no. Get it? Because they lost to Michigan. It's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. All right, so that's a banger of a start to this short show. Only 2 hours, and we wasted 2 minutes doing that. Coming up a little bit later on the show, some of our normal features that we didn't get a chance to get to yesterday, including our NFL tiers. We will have competition Wednesday today. Anthony, that wheel, we're going to need to get it over here because I owe the show a spin. And then I do think we're going to have to get it back over to your side based off of how things went. I'm actually currently compiling our season records.
Oh, right now?
Yeah, I started it before the show. I didn't finish.
I'm getting destroyed.
It's not particularly close so far.
I know it's not.
But there's some weeks coming that you won somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So there's going to be 1 week where you make up some ground.
It was 2 weeks.
Well, I think I already passed one of them.
Oh.
In the records.
Okay.
But
who's counting, though?
I mean, we were counting the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who's counting us. We were counting the whole time. That's kind of the point. It's a competition. There's a scoreboard. You're not doing terribly for a lot of these weeks. It's just, it's like when you lose a game 42-38 and you're the offensive coordinator for the team that scored 38.
Yeah.
We did well. We just didn't do enough.
Nope.
Too bad you don't have a defensive coordinator over there. In fact, the one time you had a chance to play defense, you saved me from myself. You saved me from picking a loss.
I did.
And you picked it instead, and I won by 1.
Yep.
Yeah, that did happen. So we'll review this week's selections at 5:30. We'll make new ones quickly at 5:45, and then we'll say goodbye. And we'll give things over to Johnny Holiday and company. All right, we're going to start the show today, though, with something that's kind of left over from the weekend. You get done talking about the game, and you're like, all right, was there anything else from the Commanders that we need to touch on? Oh, right. They cut Emmanuel Forbes, their first-round pick from last year. And, Anthony, I cannot stress this enough. He was their first-round pick last year. It is 2024 for another 20-something days. He was picked in 2023. That is exceptionally rare. But I have also been saying for weeks, hey, I don't really know why he's still here. And when you take the draft pick and you take the name away, they ultimately cut a guy who was their 6th corner, who was a backup corner who didn't really play special teams. Of course that guy got cut. That guy has no use on your roster. And like before, he was like the next guy up on the outside, right? He was ahead of Michael Davis, and so if, God forbid, something happened to Benjamin St. Juste or Mike Sainristil and they needed someone to play outside, they would have said, Emmanuel Forbes, you're up. Go do your best. And they tried to work him in on some certain stuff, some packages, and he had the one really nice pick, and that was like not the last snap he played, but the last one that anybody remembers. Not me, because I remember the snap where I went, he's going to get cut. And it was an outside run to the right, and he just didn't have any interest in really getting involved in the run game. And I went, that's not good. That was a bad job by Forbes. And I don't remember what game that was, but I know.
Bears.
Was it the Bears game? Yeah. I was like, he's not going to play again. And he didn't show up on defense basically ever again. And then when they needed a roster spot, He got cut. And then, lo and behold, by Sunday, I don't want to say that was old news, but there was more news on that category. Ron Rivera, high draft picks who are on the outs, maybe not literally all the way, but Fedarian Mathis, healthy scratch. I asked Standig in the press box, I was like, was there an injury? Did I miss? Did I forget a Fedarian Mathis DNP in practice? Nope. Healthy scratch. He's just not playing. And I know, like, people, I think, fundamentally understand that when you miss on draft picks, it's really hard to be a good football team because the best players typically come through the draft, right? You build through the draft for a reason, right? But let's understand, great players almost never become free agents. And if you have to trade for them, you have to give up a lot. And the one way to get a great player for cheap, or cheap to start, is because you draft him. So you've already got a talent dearth 4 years deep of first rounders. And then you now have you have a second rounder who is also not performing up to snuff. And Anthony, I think this crystallizes it in a way I can't possibly put it better than this. If you had a Commander's wish list, what would it be? Like, you could just magically pluck, not a specific name, but positions. What would it be?
Corner would be one for sure.
Corner? Yeah.
Wide receiver. D end.
Yeah.
And then from there, I mean, the O-line, but I like where we are.
I think you could definitely talent upgrade the O-line, but like, I think those are the three most glaring holes on this football team, pending Marshawn Lattimore being awesome, which they've already tried to pre-fill the hole, if you will, are a top-flight corner, a top-flight pass rusher, and another great wide receiver to go with Terry, another playmaker. Yeah. What are three of their last 4 first-round picks that failed? Jahan Dotson, a wide receiver, Emmanuel Forbes, a corner, and Chase Young, a defensive end. If that doesn't paint the picture for you of how terrible it is to miss on first-round picks and how damaging it is to miss on first-round picks, I simply have nothing for you. I cannot explain it better than that. You rely on those guys that you draft in the first round to be high-end starters and hopefully your blue-chip players. And the Commanders, and then, by the way, you give them typically a pretty long leash to try to figure that out. And Washington did that, and because Ron Rivera was bad at drafting, bad at developing, bad at coaching, you now have significant gaps at 3 really high-priced positions. Wide receivers and defensive ends especially are expensive. 2 of the most non-quarterback expensive positions on the field. And you have busts or have moved on from all of those guys. And in Jamin's case, like, it kind of worked out because you went and signed Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. But, like, what if Jamin was Frankie Louvu without having to spend the money there? Like, that in some ways is kind of the dream, right? You draft a guy like that with that kind of explosiveness and that kind of twitchiness, and you're like, that's what imagine what Frankie Louvu could do with Jamin Davis's body. Right? Off-ball linebacker with pass rush juice, like, that's the dream. They got it in Louvu because Adam Peters is great at his job. He's good at actually finding the thing. They missed on it with Jamin because that regime was bad at it. And Ron specifically, because he was the one driving the bus. Their process was terrible. In fact, a lot of the scouts that helped with this year's draft were the same scouts that were here for Rivera. Martin Mayhew, who's in the front office still, and Marty Herney, who was an advisor, although I don't think his advice was taken a lot in this draft. And Marty, I don't know how much scouting he's doing versus a lot of administrative stuff that he's very good at and was great at San Francisco when he worked with Adam the first time. Like, those guys were all in the room. But I think the biggest difference is Adam understands that when you're looking at players and scouting them, you have to be able to understand who the person is. You're scouting people. Will Dawkins talks about with the Wizards, with the Wizards all the time. We're going to scout the person first, and Adam Peters has said very similar things. Because if you don't have the competitor and you don't have the work ethic and you don't have all that stuff, the physical traits, which a guy like Jamin has, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't have the football intellect. And I'm not going to talk about anybody's actual intelligence, but football intellect to read, react, diagnose, especially as a defensive player, all that stuff. Then the physical tools, a 4.340, 28 reps on a bench press, 40-inch vertical, a perfect, out of central casting, 6 foot, 225-pound build. None of that matters. But if you're a little undersized, but you have the heart of a lion and the brains of a Hall of Famer, then you can turn into a pretty good player. So that's the difference, is how these guys scout, and you can see the damage that it's done. And luckily, now you have people in charge who I think will be able to fill some of these holes, but it is going to take time. And yet the fact that they are, have 8 wins this season, can finish 2-2 in December and still get to double digits. They go 3-1. They have 11 wins for the first time since 1991 is basically a miracle. And it's crystallized by that. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Any calls on the football of it all? The leftover story from the weekend. Fadarian Mathis, healthy scratch. Emmanuel Forbes, cut. We'll talk about that with you before we get to our NFL tier rankings coming up at 4:30 here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Talking with you about Emmanuel Forbes being let go. You can come in. Chris, what'd you forget? Is it the thing that I flung on the floor down there?
That and my jacket.
Oh, here, you want your jacket? Here, Chris Russell, everybody. He's come for his jacket. All right, you're welcome.
I think that's all I forgot.
Okay. I heard a rumor that you also lost your mind.
Well, that was a long time.
Okay. All right. I just assumed that it happened at some point during the show today because Linnell was here.
That's what this team and this business will do to you.
Oh, okay.
And traffic.
People.
People.
Yeah, people. Okay. All right. That's
live
that. Chris, we're good. Thanks, buddy. All right. That was the full Chris Russell experience in about 30 seconds. Thanks, pal. That's a show you can get from 1 to 4 every day, everybody. One, Anthony. I think we cut that for a promo. Chris, we had Chris losing stuff, complaining about traffic, and complaining about other things. It's basically the Chris Russell Show.
Of course.
Yeah. All right. So we'll get that up over to Essig. See if we can get that on a promo for the 1 to 4. All right. Back to what we were doing. Topic at hand. Emmanuel Forbes. He got cut this weekend. That's all 4 of Ron Rivera's first-round picks no longer with the franchise, which is pretty wild considering prior to this year, that was the previous 4 years of the franchise. 301-230-0980. Let's get things started talking about this with Jack. Jack, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hi, Craig. Can you hear me?
I got you loud and clear.
Hey, so I, like probably many people, are sad that we don't have 4 first-round picks on the team anymore. I totally understand why they aren't on the team. Seems like they were overdrafted, along with a few other players from the recent years. But it also seems like we have a good coaching staff that can coach up players and get maybe lesser talent on the field to produce wins, which is great. But my question is, are we limiting ourselves in not being able to coach up players that aren't players that fit Dan Quinn's system? I know, like, for instance, Emmanuel Forbes was smaller, but were we not able to teach a new system to a player who's limited? And is that going to limit us in the future when we have to go searching deep in the draft and maybe overpay in free agency for players that specifically fit our system that we can't coach up just anybody?
So, Jack, it's a great question. And with that said, I actually kind of disagree with the premise. Let me explain and see if this makes sense to you. You tell me if I lose you here, if the argument's convincing.
Okay.
Like, they tried to coach up Emmanuel Forbes. Didn't work. It's not that he inherently, based off of any singular trait, did not fit the system. They gave him similar coaching as everyone else, and he did not fit. Mike Sainristil still is a second-round pick. He, quote-unquote, fits the system because he took to the coaching. I think these coaches are very, very good. On the other side of the ball, I know this is not on the defensive side, but, like, Jaden Daniels fit the system. Like, they made sure they got the right guy. But part of being the right guy is he has the ability to learn. He's going to put in time. He's got the right attitude, all that kind of stuff. I think some of the problems with guys like Forbes and Phil Mathis, frankly, they are not as open to being coached. And maybe they just need a fresh change of scenery and they'll, respond differently in a different environment. But I don't think they're remotely limited by a quote-unquote Dan Quinn type of player being someone that has to be like a third-round pick or later. I think it's these guys were coached. They were coached up. They were asked to do the same things as other players, some of whom are more talented, some of whom are less, and they did not respond to that. And that is the nature of teaching, by the way. You're not going to bat 1,000 as a teacher. You could be a great math teacher, a great fitness coach, a great boss who's leading a cyber project and has to teach his team or her team some new skill. And you could have really smart people who don't adapt to your teaching style. So I think the limitation here is if I'm going to be nice about it, the fit of people together, if I'm going to be probably more direct in criticism of Forbes and Mathis specifically, it's they didn't particularly, and Jahan Dotson, by the way, same thing too. I don't think they like the new people in charge. They didn't take to the coaching that a lot of other people did, and that's really more about them than it is the coaching or needing anything that's extremely limiting in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sure, like, we didn't see all of those guys. Of course, Jahan Dotson was traded before the season started, so we weren't really able to see if he was able to produce on the field. But I'm sure in practice he wasn't showing it, and the other guys as well, especially with the corner weakness we've had with the whole team. You would think that if Forbes was showing more, he would get more playing time. I just hope it doesn't limit us in the future, like out of, say, 100 players in the draft, we have to take 50 of them off our list completely just because they don't fit our system.
Well, it's not. I guess the thing I'm saying, Jack, is it's not about the system fit in terms of some extremely limiting physical thing based off of the coverages they want to play. If they got 50 guys that aren't that competitive in a 100-player draft, I don't want the 50 that aren't competitive. It's a mindset and a thing that is kind of necessary to succeed in the NFL. Like, I don't know that Emmanuel Forbes is all of a sudden going to go to LA and it's going to work out. They have some great DB coaches out there. Aubrey Pleasant, I think, is back with them, who was here for a long time and is very, very well respected, and if probably a future defensive coordinator in the league. So they've got, and Sean's atmosphere is great, and it's different than here, and maybe that'll work for Emmanuel. But I think Emmanuel Forbes would have not worked in a lot of places. It wasn't specific to Quinn that he doesn't fit here. And I think the people that do succeed in the league, like a lot more of them are going to be guys that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters like than guys that they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And overall, I love the direction we're heading in, though. And I love our recent draft, and I hope we can get 4 more of those and head our way to the Super Bowl soon.
Yep, I hear you, Jack. Thanks so much for the call. Really appreciate it. 301-230-0980, of course, the phone number if you want to get in as well. And I think about this through the lens of the Wizards rebuild as well. Last year's draft was notoriously weak. That was a known thing. There were not going to be, as far as we could tell, superstars in this draft. But Will Dawkins and Michael Winger knew that there were specific traits and characteristics that they wanted as they try to build the culture here that they want. And it's funny because the Commanders are so far ahead of schedule because they've done a really good job detailing up both sides of the ball. Jaden has played unrealistically well for a rookie, right? It's unrealistic to expect a rookie quarterback to play like this. He has, and he's been consistent. I do think this is who he is. This isn't a facade. This isn't fake. This isn't anything other than this dude is actually ready to play NFL football at a high level right now, and they're doing a good job of putting the exact right amount on his plate. And so because of that, they're 8-5, or 8-4, whatever they are. On the other side of the coin, you have what I think a lot of us were scared the worst case scenario was for this year, which is Jaden is not ready to play yet, but shows signs in the long term, or the talent around him really sinks his ship. Defensively, they just don't have any talent, and so Joe Witt and Dan Quinn could try anything they wanted, and it wouldn't work. And you have a 3-13 football team or a 3-14 football team, and the basketball version of that is the Wizards, where they have said, like, we're in a deconstruction phase, and the leagues are different. Like, how you can build in the NFL is very different than how you can build in the NBA, which is ironic because it should be harder to build an NFL roster because there's 53 guys, 70 if you count the practice squad, basically, versus just 5 that you have to get right, 8, 9 you have to get right in the NBA. But, like, that shows you the margin of error is actually that much smaller in the NBA. And so they found Keshawn George and was like, this dude is a competitive maniac. And we like where his shot's at, and we think we can extend his range out. And there's just a lot of stuff that we like. So they took him, and they got a legitimate NBA starter in Keshawn George. Bub Carrington, competitive as all hell. They love him in the building, and they should. Is he young, and is he not ready to be a good NBA player yet? Yeah. Is he a future starter? Probably. And if not, he's going to be a great 6th guy. And then Sarr defensively looks like he's already one of the better players in the league at a couple of very important skills. And so they found in a draft of not much 3 guys who are future starters for them or current starters for them. And future is probably more important because some of these guys might be starters now and then they get better players in the future. And it's like, actually, you're a bench player in the long term. I think at least 2, if not 3 of these guys will be long-term starters for them. That's outstanding in a draft where there's allegedly no talent. And so knowing what you're looking for is more important than the volume. Don't worry so much, I would say, about the guys that you're not looking for. Make sure you get the guys that you actually are looking for onto your team. And that's what Adam Peters is great at. Hopefully, we'll see if the results are here in the long term for the Wizards, but theoretically, that's what they've done. And, that's how the Nats are going to rebuild with Rizzo and what Winger and whoever he winds up hiring with the Mystics. Like, on down the list. Any sport, any team, find out what exactly it is that's going to make your team the best team, and then hit the ball out of the park on the analysis of that. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. We'll perhaps get back to some calls later on in the show. Coming up next, though, our NFL tier rankings for Week 14. Playoff picture becoming a lot clearer. Then, 5 o'clock, Sam Fortier joins us on this another silly Congress RFK story. Oh, Maryland Senators, I have questions for you. We'll get to that with Fortier at 5. Competition Wednesday at 5:30 here on The Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free, he said, Odyssey app. Anthony, I do believe it's Spotify Wrapped season. I feel like there's an Odyssey Wrapped that is coming out soon as well. I think that's happening. So if you're one of our top listeners on the Odyssey app, you might just get a little thank you from those of us here at the station.
Yes, sir.
So that's fun. Also, if you, in your Spotify Wrapped, if you are a listener or one of the top listeners of Take Command or of this show, would love for you to post that. Tag me on Instagram at hoffman.sports. We'll definitely repost you, shout you out, say thanks. So I saw JP was doing that earlier today, and I was like, I hope we showed up at the top of some people's podcast feed, the Hoffman Show and or Take Command. So if that's you, then go ahead and share that out to all your friends. Do the podcast part of your Spotify Wrapped. No one wants to hear your playlist. People do want to hear your podcast. I don't know if that's actually true, but I'm going to say that it is.
While we're here,
yes.
so I don't have Spotify. I have Apple Music.
Do they do a Wrapped too?
We do a year in review.
Oh, okay. Because I kind of switched halfway through the year. After a conversation we had on this show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Where the music sounded
weird.
weird.
The music quality is better on Apple. Now, I was paying for both, so like might as well just use it. I'm not going to get my wife off Spotify. She's got like 400 playlists, so I mean, we're just going to have to be a double pay household, but that's all right. We can handle it, thankfully.
Yeah, so I was going through mine. Who's your most listened to?
I actually haven't seen mine yet.
At all?
I haven't seen mine yet, no.
Oh, okay.
My guess is just from the last week and a half, mine's going to wind up being Kendrick.
Yeah. Kendrick didn't make mine. Not yet, anyway.
That's what I told Rachel. She's like, surprised Kendrick didn't make mine. I was like, yeah, you give it another week.
Yeah.
How much we're playing that album.
Yeah, it'll be up there.
Bum, bam, bam.
I have Rod Wave.
I knew that was going to be yours.
Do you want to know the minutes?
Oh, my God. Hold on. How many minutes are in a day?
Ooh!
Let me get some context here before I throw out a random number. There's
Yo.
24 hours in a day times 60 minutes. So there's 1,440. I'm going to say you listen to Rod Wave for a total of 20 days. 28,800 minutes.
28,000 minutes?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so you listened to less than 20 minutes or 20
Far
days
less.
of Rod Wave.
I don't only listen to Rod Wave.
I know, but you listen to a lot of Rod Wave.
I do. So I'll give you a hint.
10,000 minutes.
A little less.
8,000 minutes.
7,703 minutes of Rod Wave, baby.
7,703 minutes divided by 60 is 128 hours divided by 24. So you listen. If you just started listening to Rod Wave right now, it would take you 5 1/3 days. That's 5 days, 8 hours to be done listening to the amount of Rod Wave that you listen this year.
Okay. That's not too bad.
So on Wednesday, like by Sunday.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I have
That's a lot.
2,000 minutes of Adele. I have 2,000 minutes of Future. Metro Boomin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where do I get mine?
So literally, as you open the Apple app, it should show up,
Oh, here you go. Ready to replay.
and then you scroll.
This is your replay.
Don't hit play your highlight reel. Just scroll down.
Scroll down. Top artists. See, this is not surprising to me. Because I kind of switch and I mostly just use Apple Music like while I'm running.
Yeah.
And again, I kind of started. It was probably like August. No, it was during football season. I want to say it was like September, October that I kind of made the switch. So Kendrick, 179 minutes.
He's your top artist already?
Yeah, I mean we listened to the entire album on the drive back from Ohio.
That makes sense.
John Baptiste.
Okay.
I listen to a lot of John Baptiste. He's fantastic. Coldplay.
Okay.
Actually, in part, listen to a lot of Coldplay. But it's like only 82 minutes. There's a couple of songs that are on some running playlists on the regular, and then I decided to just listen to some Coldplay on a run this weekend. Hozier, he's got like one or two songs that wind up on a lot of running playlists. Shabuzi, which is completely just the bar song on every running playlist that I've made.
Right.
Top songs. Million Dollar Baby.
Okay.
Too Sweet by Hozier. A
Yep.
bar song. Feel It Still by Portugal the Man. That's on a running playlist. And then Head and Heart, the old Joe Corey song.
Yeah.
That's on a couple of running playlists. Top album. Yeah, my top album, GNX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No question.
But like if I did Spotify, it would here's the thing about my Spotify. It is reflective of the songs that I play as a fitness coach, not as things I listen to personally.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be an accurate,
Correct.
reflection of.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is part of the reason I was like, I can kind of keep Spotify for work purposes. Work. Work. Yeah, it's real work. When I'm coaching, and then use my Apple Music for my own personal use.
Yeah.
So next year around this time, we can do this again, and it'll be far more reflective of my personal music taste.
All
and
right.
the albums I like and don't like and whatever on the year.
Can't wait to do it a year from now.
Because the thing is, like, I listen to a lot. My podcast one would be far more interesting because I listen, like, when I drive, I listen to podcasts almost exclusively. Music for me is kind of if I'm doing something else and want some music in the background, or when I'm running / working out. So, you must listen to music while you drive.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes
Also,
sense.
the flights that I get on.
Oh,
so-
see, I guess I listen to some music on flights.
So I think some of my music, or the minutes anyway, the count,
Yeah.
is sort of kind of skewed because I'll fall asleep listening to music.
Yeah.
So I'll get
And you've been
plays
doing
of-
a lot of flying.
Yeah.
So,
and I sleep every flight.
yeah.
Every
Okay.
flight.
I hear you. That makes sense. All right. We get back. That was not the plan. But it was interesting. We learned something about Anthony. He listened 365 days a year. He spent a full 5 of them listening to Rod Wave. But coming up next, our NFL tiers. We will blitz through them before we welcome Sam Fortier to the show at 5 o'clock. Anthony, I thought we talked about not playing this song because it has the really sad music video with the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah, we banned this song.
Well, I have the lyric video up.
That's better than the music video because otherwise you'd be crying over there.
Yes.
All right, you know a song that everyone likes to hear?
NFL films.
Yeah, let's get to it. Let's get to our NFL Power Rankings. Brought to you by...
Nobody, Craig.
That is correct. It is still brought to you by nobody, but if you would like to change that and you have a company that would like to sponsor a small part of our show, we welcome you to contact me. I'll put you in touch with the right people. You go to HoffmanShow.com, use the contact page, and we'll get things taken care of. All right, prime contenders. And by the way, the NFL, the playoffs are starting to get pretty set. I mean, depending on how a couple of things go this weekend, we could really have a fairly set of 14, and then it's going to be people battling for seeds. And all of a sudden, some of these prime contenders battling for top seeds and that singular bye that now exists in the 17 layout. That become the most interesting part of this final stretch of the regular season. So prime contenders, Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Steelers, Eagles. The Lions, obviously. Chiefs, obviously. Eagles, obviously. Steelers just did what they did to Cincinnati. I think they should stay there. In fact, the fact that their defense had a day like that and their offense was able to make up for it makes me more scared of Pittsburgh, not less.
They're cooking over there, man. Let Russ cook.
Russ and Fuego. The Ravens. What the hell do we do with them? They lost to another prime contender.
Yep.
So that's relevant. But,
I feel like we're treating the Ravens like we did the 49ers for the longest. We have given them the benefit of the doubt because of the talent that they have on the roster. Now with the Ravens, they're 8-5. They're in control of their destiny. The 49ers, however, their season is over. So I think, personally, we should leave them here and put an asterisk next to their name.
I think that's where I'm at as well.
Or should we move them down?
No, I think that's the right move because here's the thing. They lost to the Eagles by 5.
Yep.
In a game where Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals. Now, Justin Tucker missing 2 field goals is not like Justin Tucker missing 2 field goals 2 years ago, nevertheless 5 years ago. He's had a bad year, which is kind of wild because I think part of it too, I saw this the other day. I think it was Lindsay Rhodes, who's covered the NFL for a while, was posting about this. She said, I went back to an old podcast episode I did with another kicker who had been really good for a long time. And, sometimes a slight change can really mess with a guy. And this is the first time in 16 years that Tucker's had a different holder. And so it could be something just that small. But he's also 35 years old. Maybe his fine motor skills are taking the 1% decline that can cause a 50-plus yard kick to be a couple degrees left or right, and then voila. But I don't necessarily think that a kicker, even if they lose the AFC Championship game on a kick, I'm just not ready to move them down in a game where they were with Philly right down to the end, 5-point game. They left 6 points on the board on kicks alone. I'm willing to leave them up on that merit with the asterisk saying, hey, if you don't win, if you lose this week, then down you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we get to the puncher's chance teams. And do we need to bring any of these teams up? Let me read them out first.
Yeah.
The Commanders, the Packers, the Vikings, the Texans. We need to have a different conversation about them. Chargers and Broncos.
Now I think all the teams.
Let me make some arguments.
Okay.
I'll go by record here. The record or the argument for the Vikings is very simply, they're 10-2. How are you 10-2 and not a prime contender? No, they're not leading their division because the Lions are 11-1. But the volatility they play with, they've mostly come out on the right end of. And I don't know, a couple years ago, they had that crazy season in 2021 where they won a zillion one-score games. And, of course, they lost to the Giants. Like, everyone thought they were fake good. They lost to the Giants in the playoffs. Daniel Jones got a contract extension off of it. Now, ironically, Jones is with the Vikings after he's been cut by New York. Because what a world. And Darnold has enough pop to him that he's going to make like 3-4 plays a game. Now, he might also throw some to the other team, but like they're never, I don't say they're never, but like they're unlikely to be shut out. They're unlikely to offensively just completely not being able to do anything because Sam Darnold's going to find a couple of plays. JJ's as reliable as they come. Kevin's really good at what he does. And defensively, they've kind of refound it after a squabble in the middle of the season. That didn't even cost them that much because they're 10-2.
I understand the argument. I think there's some reluctancy because of Sam Darnold, but they only lost to the Lions by 2.
Yeah.
A game they should have won. And who was their other loss to? Their other loss was to...
Didn't they have a silly one?
Oh, the Rams.
Rams. Which, like, the Rams, when the Rams decide to show up and everybody's healthy and finishes a game, are fine.
But what happens if the Vikings go out there and lose to the Bears? Divisional game. Bears are
Then
up
they
and down.
were to come back down.
Okay.
Okay, here's the thing. That was the argument for. I
Okay.
made the argument. I don't know that I believe it.
Oh.
Because I would not pick the Vikings in a game against any of the teams, including the Ravens that we mentioned previously. Like, what I think needs to happen here is we actually are going to start to pare down the top of this, and there's going to be more teams at the bottom. Like, earlier in the season, more teams had a wider path in front of them.
Yeah.
What I actually think is going to happen here is we're going to make because the goal is to group the teams together that belong together. And I actually think instead of moving some teams up like we did, like, hey, they actually kind of belong up. We're going to wind up moving some teams out of this upper tier or these upper tiers so that we really have the cream of the crop at the top. We have the truly punchy teams right below them. And then there's going to be a lot of people or a lot of teams that wind up in the interesting but not good enough or the no chance tier. Yeah. That's what I think is going to happen here. So I'm actually okay, despite the fact that they're 10-2, leaving the Vikings here.
I am too.
But I don't want to put an asterisk if all they got to do is beat the Bears.
Well, they play the Falcons this weekend. And then they'll play the Bears next week.
Do we put a carrot next to them?
Let's put a carrot next to them.
All right, they get a carrot. Vikings, we got you a carrot. Packers, argument for them. We thought Miami was trending the right direction. I know it was cold, but they beat the crap out of them on Thanksgiving. They're 9-3. That's pretty darn good. They've also got, I think, let me double check this stat real quick. They have got a great point differential. They're plus 78. By the way, they're exactly tied with Minnesota on the point differential. They've won 3 in a row. The Vikings, by the way, have won 5 in a row. I do think it gets hard to make the argument for Green Bay over Minnesota based off of some of those things that I just said. The simple argument would be I trust Jordan Love more than I do Sam Darnold. And so if you want to, based off the Jordan Love of it all, move them up, I would say, okay, I'll listen. But I think I also default to the fact that, like, Jordan Love is one of the punchiest quarterbacks in the league. Like, he has thrown a ton of picks this year. His upside is ridiculously high. His downside is leaves something to be desired. I think they get a carrot as well at best, or they just flat out stay.
So they got the Lions tomorrow, Thursday Night Football. Jordan Love has taken care of the ball the last 2 games.
He has.
That was a big concern of mine.
I think if they beat the Lions, I think they get a carrot, and if they beat the Lions, they go up.
Go beat the Lions.
Okay.
Go beat the Lions.
Okay. And then the other teams to consider here in Puncher's Chance. Let's do the home team. I think the Commanders are still incredibly punchy. I think in the right matchup, they can beat anybody. And if they get it scouted right and they have the right game plan going in like they did against Tennessee, they will beat the crap out of you. And if they get up early in games, they are hard to come back on because they just keep going. There's a relentlessness to them, a competitiveness to them. Like, they have a championship mindset. They don't have championship talent. So against the best teams, is it going to be tough sledding? Yeah, those teams can go play man-to-man. Their men are better than the Commanders' men, and that's unfortunately kind of been it. Maybe they can figure some things out. But I do think that, like, they competed with Philly. They competed with Baltimore. They competed with Pittsburgh. They've shown they can compete with these teams. They got to beat them. But if I don't think any of those teams, to use the puncher's chance analogy in a literal boxing sense, I don't think any of those teams want to get in the ring with Washington again.
I don't think so either.
Okay, so they stay. I think the same is true with Denver. Denver defensively has got some real dudes. They have like the one true shutdown corner in the entire league in Surtain. And then offensively, like Sean Payton has found ways to make them good. And they have some weeks where they're terrible, and Bo Nix, you're like, what? That dude was a first-round pick? You've got to be kidding me. They have other weeks where Bo Nix is all of a sudden challenging Jaden Daniels for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think they are extremely punchy.
Yeah, I love the Broncos. I'm not ready to move them up, though.
Yeah, I'm not ready. I don't. They're unless they get to the Super Bowl, I'm not ready to move them up.
That is insane.
I just think they're a low. Like their ceiling is. They're consistently hitting a high percentage of their ceiling. I just don't think their ceiling is particularly high. And then we've talked about this in a weird roundabout way. The Chargers are the Commanders of the West.
Yes, they are.
Like they are not talented in a lot of spots, but they play their faces off. They obviously have a top flight quarterback who does some stuff for them. So I'm good with that. All right, the last team that was in puncher's chance is the Houston Texans. The Texans aren't good. They're just flat out not good. Offensively, they're a mess. They can't run it. Defensively, they're pretty good. But they're not beating two of these other teams to make the AFC title game, which is our threshold.
Yeah.
So I am moving. They lost to the Titans 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and they got a tough 3-game slate. Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens.
And they win 2 of those 3, they can go back up in a puncher's chance.
For sure.
Right now, I'm sorry, you're interesting, but not quite good enough.
Yep.
All right. So then quickly, interesting, but not quite good enough. I don't think we'll see any major changes here. Maybe 1 or 2 teams. Falcons. They're a week away from being a no chance. The problem is they're winning their division, so we can't put them in no chance. The Bears.
Oh, they lost.
They did lose. But
I don't put that on the players.
Yeah, I agree.
Put that on the coach.
Flus is with the Jets in actual hell. Funny enough, that's where Matt Eberflus is right now. The Seahawks.
They won, right?
They did. Do they really belong in puncher's chance? I guess kinda. They feel like they're kind of on the Washington Chargers level.
Watch, they won last week, and they're going to lose this week.
Yeah, well, if they do that, then we'll move them right back down. Yeah. The Buccaneers, they beat the Panthers, but it took overtime.
The Panthers look good, though, Craig.
They do. I want 1 more week for Tampa. Okay. Tampa's going to stay. Niners.
Do we move them down?
I kind of think we do.
No McCaffrey.
McCaffrey's done.
Injuries,
their season
no
is
Bosa.
cursed.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kyle and company. Your season's cursed.
Who would have thought?
All right, the Colts.
They won, baby.
They won, so they get to stay because they were asterisks. We'll take the asterisk away. The Bengals, so interesting. So not good enough.
Yeah, I think they need an asterisk, though.
I think they're where they belong. Dolphins, same thing. They're where they belong. Cardinals,
where they
belong. Rams,
came up short.
Short. They're where they belong. And the Panthers, congrats on continuing to be interesting. We don't. Your fight, your tenacity keeps you out of the poop zone. In the poop zone, no chance in heck. The Raiders. Do we need to send them to Jets land?
No.
Okay. Jags. I actually feel bad for the Jags.
Yeah, I feel bad.
They get immunity for the week. Patriots.
I don't think they've been with the Jets.
They've been punchy. They're fine. Titans. They won. They beat the Texans 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Giants. I think the Giants and Jets are meant for each other.
I think
the Giants are
baby.
A couple of weeks ago, if you're new to the show, we used to just do 4 categories. We invented a 5th because this current list is no chance in hell, and then we have actual hell where the Jets have lived, and we're gonna put the Giants in actual hell. The Saints, they're fine. The Cowboys, they're fine. They saved themselves. They lost to the Giants. They were gonna go down. The Browns, they should just get their own like comedic tier, and then the Niners we just put there. Okay. Jets and Giants, you're in actual hell. Everyone else, that's where you are. Where we are is going to take a quick break and come back with Sam Fortier talking about the latest in the RFK Stadium bill and why 2 Maryland senators want, I'm not making this up, a squadron of fighter jets in exchange for their votes. That's next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And just after 5 o'clock, it is time.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Today's top story is another update on the RFK Stadium bill, which is hopefully, if you want that to actually pass, going to be attached to the defense bill that is going to make its way through Congress here at the end of the session. And that is where things get really complicated. To try to help sort it out, Sam Fortier, our friend from the Washington Post, is here. Sam, what's more fun, this or breaking down the offense last season?
Craig, I actually really enjoy this, man. I really enjoy learning about the intersection of business, politics, sports, the way that this is how things get done. You know, I'm not from DC. It feels very DC that this is happening, and I am enjoying tracking it, figuring it out, saying, hey, this is an incredibly complicated and weird thing. Am I looking at this right? And someone saying, no, absolutely not. Here's what you need to do.
I hear you on that, but it is also the fact that it is very DC and all of that actually frustrates the hell out of me, because at the end of the day, it's a football stadium. This should not be taking up the time of the federal government. There are real problems to be solved, and also some of the quotes in your story with your colleagues at the Post drove me absolutely up a wall. The idea that the federal government shouldn't be tipping the scales and where the stadium is going. And I'm like, this is coming in a joint statement from 2 U.S. senators. You don't think that's the federal government tipping it here? So let's dive into it before we get too far into me losing my mind over the DC-ness of it all and the fact that this is how business gets done. Two senators from Maryland want, basically, because this is going to be attached to a military defense bill, they want a military concession here. Ultimately, when the rubber meets the road, do you think that the DC side of this, well, I guess I should even ask you this, who is the DC side of this? Who would get to make that kind of decision? And do you think that is a quote-unquote trade that they are willing to make?
Yeah, I think we got to zoom out even further here, which is basically that, normally when this bill passes a subcommittee in the Senate, it goes to the Senate floor, but that, they're just running out of time. It's not going to get that. So it can get attached to one of two bills. That right now they're focused on NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, but it also could get attached to basically the federal spending bill, a continuing resolution. So there's two angles here. And Maryland wants three things. They've communicated that to Chuck Schumer, and Maryland and the commanders met yesterday, and the Jets are one of those things. The other things that they're looking for are assurances about what's going to happen to the Landover site if the commanders leave. They do not want it to end up like the RFK Stadium site, and they also want the team to put out a statement of, where are you going to go? What is your preference? So the Jets are one of those three things. But to go back to your original question, who is even DC in this case? It is a thing that, I think people will debate what the federal legislators can do or can't do, right? Because it's the Air National Guard squadrons could be up to Congress. They could just do that unilaterally. So Maryland is talking to them about it. The assurances they want, those could only come from the commanders, the private landowners of 200 acres. And the statement also could really only come from the commanders because they need to declare, or Maryland wants them to declare where they're going to go. So now that I've made this even more complicated, what else can I say?
Let's go here. If this land was not federal land, because I do think that the idea, and this I think is really important to a lot of our listeners. Our listenership is a lot in DC and then also Maryland, just where our radio signal goes. Talking about details nobody cares about, but we have a lot of people that listen in Maryland, and if you're in PG County, you probably do want to know what's going to happen with that land. I think that's a relevant question. But if this land that was the bargaining chip on the other side of this was in Virginia or somewhere else where we're not talking about the DMV area, wouldn't the local legislators and the local folks have to deal with the team directly on that? Like, how does that problem actually get solved, and why is the United States Congress involved in that?
Right. Yeah. The United States Congress involvement is unique to DC. But if you look at other stadium deals in other jurisdictions, oftentimes it's playing cities off of each other or playing counties off of each other, or like with what the Bears are doing right now, they were, using a suburb of Chicago, playing it off of the city of Chicago. So like sports team owners always have incentive to have multiple jurisdictions fighting over them, right? Because it drives up the price. It, gets you the best deal. And you see a lot of times, people would invent, San Antonio, or like, oh, we're going to relocate the Bills or whatever. But DC just happens to have 3 jurisdictions. One of them is mostly controlled by the federal government. And so that's how you get the like extra special complicated, pie that we have here.
So Sam Fortier, Washington Post, is with us. And we know that a contingent representing the Commanders and the NFL, which included Josh Harris, Roger Goodell, and others, met with New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who is the majority leader until Congress changes over in January. And he is the one who ultimately will decide if this RFK bill gets added to the defense bill, or if they were to veer and add it to the budget bill, but as you and your colleagues reported, to the defense bill as of now. And he apparently was like, you need to go work this out with the Maryland senators. Is it possible for Goodell and Harris and all them to work the refs, in this case Schumer, a singular ref, in another way? Or is making the Maryland senators happy versus anybody else or any other constituency here the number one most important thing for Schumer, no matter what?
I think it would be very difficult for Goodell and Harris to work the refs in this case, because Schumer has said on the record, you need to work this out with Maryland. Like a source told me that during their conversation, Schumer told Goodell and Harris, you guys have to solve it being this problem with the Maryland senators. So to me, like, that's a referee telling you, like, go figure it out. And so now they have to figure it out, and they only have, probably 2-ish weeks to get that done.
So previously, this was being held up not by a senator or pair of senators from Maryland, but by a senator from Montana in Steve Daines. Were the Commanders and the contingency there, the NFL contingency, aware that this problem was looming? Or did the Daines hurdle finally get cleared? They look up and they're like, wait, what? Like, how prepared were they for this?
I don't think they were surprised by the Maryland delegation opposing it at all, because if you remember in February, like, the Maryland delegation, despite being allies on home rule and a lot of other, DC issues, they all opposed it in the House. And obviously that didn't matter because, they got a House floor vote that passed overwhelmingly with bipartisan support. But like, when Maryland indicates some opposition and then over the summer, you start hearing rumblings about the senators. Like I don't think this was a surprise at all. I think, honestly, Steve Daines was probably more of a surprise than Maryland.
Sam Fortier, Washington Post, with us here on the Hoffman Show, and we have reached out to Senator Chris Van Hollen and are working with his team, and we're going to try to ask him some of these questions directly on the show tomorrow. But in your reporting of this, how do the senators square their support for DC home rule, which, for those not as versed in the political language, basically the idea that, like, hey, we're adults here in the district, we can govern ourselves, like, we're going to let them do their own thing, like, we will let DC be DC like it was any other state, even if they don't have senators that are our colleagues here in Congress. How do they square this, what I would call power play, using the power they have to accomplish the thing that they want, with the idea that they allegedly support DC home rule?
Yeah, I think they see this as like what they would tell you is it's 2 distinct issues. Like, for them, it's a bad deal for the American taxpayer, in the words of Maryland Governor Wes Moore, to give DC free land and then allow them to develop a football stadium on it. And I think that, you can make some counter arguments that I think you were suggesting in the framing of the question. I think those are totally fair, but Maryland's view is this unfairly tips the scales in DC's favor in a regional competition to land a sports stadium.
Yeah, if Senator Van Hollen, if you and your team are listening and you're going to come on tomorrow, I can tell you the answer to the test beforehand. That is tipping the scales. It is not unfairly. You have an extra word in there. That is fairly tipping the scales because it actually lets DC compete on the merits, which I guess leads to the final question here, Sam, which is kind of if you have to handicap it all right now, like how would you? And I'll give you a second to think here as I contextualize the question a little bit more, which is if this land is freed to DC and it is truly a competition of the Commanders, the team, deciding between Virginia, Maryland, and DC, how does that go down? And then if it doesn't get released, do they try again next year with a different Congress, or is it then down to a 2-horse race between the Commonwealth and the state of Virginia or the state of Maryland?
You are asking like an incredibly difficult, very layered question. But
It's Sports Talk Radio, Sam. What do you think this is? You think it's a dog and pony show? No, this ain't Congress. Sports Talk Radio. We have serious stuff over here.
I mean, look, man, the thing that I can say is that it's Congress, so it's really hard to handicap whether this thing is going to pass or not. It's really like if it doesn't pass, like that's a huge deal. That could set you back if you're still Josh Harris wouldn't commit to trying for DC again if this fails, right? And if it fails, the only jurisdiction that has a site and the ability to offer public funding is Maryland. Like Virginia's not even at the table right now. If DC passes, this is going to be a Maryland versus DC competition. Virginia is not in play. If it doesn't pass, it's back to square one, and Josh Harris has to decide, like, do I want to do a quicker deal with Maryland, or do I want to like jump through all these political hoops to potentially get DC or Virginia at the table?
All right. Well, it sounds like you'll have some more work to do either way. And by the way, you're going to have to actually pay attention to the football team because they're good too. I don't know if you heard that, Sam.
Yeah, this is the major difference between the stadium story that popped last December being the monumental story. So now it's like, okay, I really got to lock in on the football team.
Yeah, well, I'd say for you then, with a very short timeline here for Congress and the team on the bye week. Bye week came at a good time for Sam Fortier, or for a terrible time because you could have taken the week off and now you can't. Well, I'll let you sort that out amongst yourself. And hopefully, to not go too deep into it, but to reference our text chain, hopefully I'll see you at a fitness class soon.
Yes, I would love that. Thanks,
all right.
Craig.
See you, buddy. That's Sam Fortier with us here on the Hoffman Show. Read his work, WashingtonPost.com. Actually, you don't even have to go /sports. This was on A1 today. The newspaper that they threw at your house, this was on the front page. So I assume it's on the front page of the Post website as well. But also if you go to WashingtonPost.com /sports and click the Commanders tab, I know it's the top story there because that's where I read it just a couple of hours ago. Appreciate Sam joining us. When we get back, Anthony, what are we doing when we get back? We only have 45 minutes left in the show before we give way to Maryland basketball here on the Team 980. Is competition Wednesday next? And then are we doing competition Wednesday at 5:30? What are we doing?
You wanted to do I had a brain fart.
I mean, I could talk more about this story. And then we're not competition Wednesdays at 5:30, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm going to talk more about this story because as you might have been able to tell from some of my questions to Sam, I have some thoughts. I'll let you hear them next. Competition Wednesday coming up in about 10 minutes here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I want to talk about the thing we just talked about with Sam Fortier, the RFK Stadium bill, which is something that I have been talking about basically since I moved here, which was over 10 years ago. I jokingly referenced yesterday when we were talking to Eric Flack that Michael Phillips and Rick Snyder made a bet on where the next stadium would be in 2014. It's something that Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder had worked on and failed spectacularly for a variety of reasons. They failed spectacularly and unspectacularly at a lot of different things. It's something that Jason Wright has been working on for a number of years now. And it is something that Josh Harris, now that there is, one, he's in place, and two, the lease at formerly FedEx Field, now Northwest Stadium, is coming up in 2028. It's one they can easily extend out a couple of years, but they would like to, like, they're kind of free to move if they would like by either 27 or 28, depending on a couple of details that aren't important to the bulk of this discussion. But now that deadline is closing, it's like, all right, well, now we gotta move. This isn't about some future project anymore. This isn't about like, oh, maybe we'll get it done and then we can move early and we can negotiate and we can pay some money here. Whatever. No. We're now in crunch time. And it's very frustrating for a litany of reasons. But I find this even more frustrating the older I get, the more politics that I consume. And I am someone who pays quite a bit of attention to that world. And also as someone who is now not just living in the area and covering this professionally, but as a citizen of the District of Columbia. I live inside the district. And that means if I, unlike any of you listening in Maryland or Virginia, would like to call my senator and express my opinion on something that is going to affect not my specific neighborhood. I don't live by RFK, but it certainly would affect my taxes, my everything. I can't do that. I can't say, hey, actually, I don't want the stadium to go back to RFK because I don't want to pay extra taxes that will help the city pay for it. Or, hey, I'm willing to pay those taxes and deal with any potential extra traffic and or blah, 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 because I don't have anyone to call. And so I've said on this show before, and I will say again now, before getting even into the meat of this particular issue, the one political issue I'm willing to talk about on this sports radio show in the District of Columbia is DC statehood. And if you don't get why it is so important based off of this, then I got nothing for you. And the thing is, the only people that truly oppose DC statehood are Republicans who don't want 2 more Democratic senators in D.C. Because if we're being adults about it, that's what would happen. The voting bloc in the District of Columbia is one of the highest concentrations of Democrats in the country. So the reality is if you made D.C. a state and gave it the same 2 senators as everyone else, that would shift the balance of power in the Senate 2 seats in the Democrats' direction. However, that should not be a valid argument because if you want to convince people that to make it not 2 Democratic senators, because they don't get automatically 2 Democratic senators, they would get 2 senators. And I promise I'm going to flip this back around to the Democrats in a second. So if you are someone who leans right or is a bona fide, diehard in the wool Republican of any variety, like I promise I'm going to come for the Democrats in a second. So I'm just making a point to make a point and show that the point actually applies to both sides. So if you would like DC statehood to not happen because you don't want to see 2 Democratic senators, well, you should be in support of DC statehood because, you know, those of us that live in the district should have representation in Congress and make better arguments, ones that appeal to the people of the District of Columbia. And then people will go, oh, you know what? I actually kind of like those Republican policies. I like that thing that they're doing over there. I'm going to vote for them because that's how democracy is supposed to work. And so instead, what we have now is a fight over land that's in the District of Columbia, in Congress, in the Senate, with 2 Democrats from Maryland who are pulling the same crap. They can't win the argument on the merits, so they're abusing the power they have, and those of us without power, the citizens of the District of Columbia, just get screwed. Because here's the thing for Chris Van Hollen and Ben Cardin, the 2 senators from Maryland. If you had an actual competition to say, hey, Washington Commanders, You come sit down with our representatives, whoever it is that wants to represent the state of Maryland, whether it's the senators, whether it's Governor Wes Moore, whether it's members of the private business community that are based in PG County where the stadium is, and you said, hey, this is what we're willing to give you. This is why we think it's really important. By the way, let's appeal to some of your better nature. The franchise, even though it wasn't you, but you have echoed the idea that you were actually going to follow through on broken promises. The franchise promised to help develop this area in Landover. You have failed spectacularly. If you come to us, we will give you X, Y, and Z. We will help you make the stadium a better experience. You already own the land, so you don't even have to pay money. We're willing to give you some money, and we have the public funding, and you would get to follow through and build goodwill with the community because you'd actually follow through on the promises. And if you know you want to make nice in this area, make right or wrong that Dan Snyder did. Pretty easy to do in this particular case. So let's make a deal. And if that was more appealing than the DC folks who were like, ugh, we can scrounge together some money, but we got the RFK site, and you're going to be on your own for a lot of this because we don't have a lot of public support for a lot of more public money, in part because we gave a lot to Ted Leonsis. Want to do a deal? Win that argument on the merits. Win the argument on the merits. And that is my point in all of this. And this is why people, by the way, hate politics, which is a huge problem. Because most people correctly, in a lot of ways, assume that backroom wheeling and dealing, handshaking, I'll vote for this if you vote for that nonsense is how business gets done. And that's not cool. That's not okay. That's not how any of this is supposed to work. The only reason that we're in this scenario where the Maryland senators can even do this is because Steve Daines, a senator from Montana, 2,500 miles or something like that away from here, delayed this thing so long that it couldn't get a standalone vote. And this is how thousands of things get done every year, because they can't get standalone votes for any variety of reasons. They just get attached to defense bills and spending bills at the end of the year, and they become these big pork barrel omnibus things. And I just think that that shouldn't be how we do business. The country should be run on what is actually best. It should be run based off merit. And so I would hope that the Maryland senators, who I think would make this argument on other things that they want to see done when it sounds politically expedient for them, or it feels politically expedient for them, would apply the same principles to something that could be a political win for them if they just abandon their principles and use their power. I do think there are times in life that you have to use power to get things done. Withholding the right to self-rule and a football stadium in the United States Congress is abso-freaking-lutely not one of them. If you want Maryland to get the stadium, that's fine. If Maryland wants to fight for the stadium, that's fine. But fight fair. Quit kicking DC in the nuts. It hurts. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of talking about this. I honestly hope that if they don't get it done this year, Josh Harris just goes, you want to know what? Fine. If you clowns are going to do this, I'm not dealing with a circus. We're just going to do the best that we can. Because they need to get out of that stadium. They need to move the franchise forward. They can't wait any longer. And instead, a bunch of Congress people are using this as their personal piñata. And there's actually, Sam was on with JP earlier today over on The Fan and had this great answer, this great soundbite that he was basically like, yeah, people on Capitol Hill don't actually even care about this. It's just, it's a way to score points. It's a, hey, if you shake my hand, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That's pretty sad, considering how much I know that getting back to RFK means to so many of you who are diehard fans of this team who deserve so much better. Coming up next, Competition Wednesday here on The Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It is Competition Wednesday, and so we are going to spin the wheel here in just a moment. By the way, if you want to hit us up on Instagram, you can at Hoffman.sports. Hoffman.sports is the place to go for the Instagram of it all. All right, so Anthony, before we get started on today's Competition Wednesday, I'm trying to see if I can get this camera to be a little bit more cooperative. But so the camera, I apologize. Well, actually, I can probably move the wheel a little bit. I need to spin the wheel for last week, or for 2 weeks ago when I was in Ohio, because that was the one time in recent memory, that I lost, and I was then on remote last week, and so I need to spin the wheel. So let's get that out of the way first, and then I can then we can go over the results, and then we'll pick this week's games. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, so I'm gonna switch camera angle here. This is gonna be fun. Can I do this all at once? I need to hit the music. Okay, and do that. Switch camera angle. Let's see if I can bring the wheel a little bit closer. Up. All right, it's gonna have to do. Okay.
And he is spinning.
That was a terrible spin. There we go. All right. That's a good spin. Oh, a costume show.
Oh,
Is what it landed on.
finally.
Yeah, it's the first time, which means I got to go on Amazon and I got to buy a little thing, and then we'll once it gets here, maybe Friday. I'll throw the little silly disguise on.
How funny would it be if I also got
Actually,
costume?
honestly, here's what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for you to get costume show, and then on Friday, what we would do is we would wear it during our NFL picks.
Okay.
That feels like the exact right thing.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's find out if I think you guys know where this is going. If you're watching on YouTube, you definitely know where this is going, because I may have put my record this season and my record this week in the graphic. Let's see if the wheel needs to go back over to Anthony. You ready, buddy?
I
old
think
pal?
so.
All right, so this goes all the way back to Thanksgiving, and I kind of had a philosophy last week. I was like, I'm gonna take division games with big point spreads, and I'm gonna take the underdog. So on Thanksgiving, I took the underdog Chicago Bears, who were 10-point dogs, and lost heartbreakingly in Matt Eberflus's last game by 3. So that's a cover for me, Anthony. That's 1-0 for your boy. Are we doing this? Yeah, we'll alternate games. You had the Chargers minus 2.5 at Atlanta. So that's good out of you, because they intercepted Kirk Cousins 4,000 times. Actually, it was 4. Yeah, I saw a stat. Kirk has like 13 picks this season, and he's 0 touchdowns, 6 picks in like his last 3 games or something like that.
God dang.
Terrible. The other application of my big line division game theory was the Raiders plus 12.5, and they lost by 3 in a very similar fashion to the Chicago Bears. So that's 2-0 for me. Excellent, love that.
They lost to the Bears this week? I thought they lost to the Chiefs.
I mean the Chiefs. Sorry, they lost to the Chiefs. They lost in a similar fashion to the Bears.
Okay.
Heartbreaking,
Yeah.
bad coaching decision or bad like clock management by the coach at the end. Although the Bears was more on the quarterback, but also the coach had a huge role to play in that. Anyway, the point is I'm 2-0. Anthony, next up for you was the Rams taking on the New Orleans Saints. That was a 2.5-point line. And the Rams, despite starting very slowly in that game, did come back to win by a nice little margin. So, Anthony, going into the final games,
2-0, baby. Talk to me nice.
we're both 2-0.
All right, let's get it then.
All right.
Okay.
I took the bleep the Jets theory with my other one, which I was just like, I'm picking Seattle because I don't like really any of these games and I hate the Jets. And if I lose betting against the Jets, I'm okay with that. It's not like I'm going to be extra mad about it. I'll just be like, fine, screw him. I still don't like you. Doesn't change a thing. But guess what? Leonard Williams had a 92-yard pick six on the play after Aaron Rodgers missed an open guy for a touchdown that would have put them up 28-0. And the Seahawks came back and won by, I think it was 4 or 5. It doesn't matter. It was more than 2. Anthony, that's another 3-0 week for me.
Oh, my gosh. Aaron Rodgers.
And then your boys, the Indianapolis Colts, they won by 1 on a 2-point conversion, but they were favored by 2.5. Anthony, you're 2-1 again. You're 2-1 again. I am 3-0. Anthony, I have compiled the records. The good news for you on the season is that you're back to 500. You are 13-13 on the season. You were 11-12, or sorry, you were 10-11. So you're 12-12 on the season. Anthony, during this segment on the season, we started in week 6. I am 19-5, not counting tiebreakers.
Just getting ridiculous, man.
Hilariously, if we count tiebreakers, I didn't do the math on this, but I think you've won more of the tiebreakers. But you can't get to the tiebreaker, so it doesn't matter.
I need to start picking the tiebreaker. That's what I need to start
Yeah, you'd
doing.
be like, hey, what game do you kind of like? What game would you pick to? Actually, I'm going to pick that one as my regular.
This is ridiculous, Craig.
It kind of is. We pick these games against the spread. I am 19-5 in a select group of games against the spread. That's like my 4th 3-0 week.
What was the tiebreaker this week?
Commanders. I had Tennessee plus 5.5. I got smoked.
Dang. Again, I would have won that too.
Yeah.
Darn it.
Which, like, if it helps you feel better emotionally, that
It
means
doesn't.
technically we're both 3-1 on the week.
No.
Nope.
'Cause
I
still
mean,
lost.
untechnically,
Yeah.
we're 3-1. Technically, I'm 3-0. You're 2-1. Anthony, during the break, we will move the wheel back over.
Sadly.
You will spin, and then we will pick in our final segment of the show, because Maryland Hoops coming up at the top of the hour, we will pick our Competition Wednesday picks for Week 14. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Final segment here on the Team 980 and on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see Anthony Haney dancing for now, but you need to stand and then go spin that wheel because you, sir, unfortunately went down again on Competition Wednesday. Are you ready to spin the wheel, Anthony? Please don't knock it over. We've already almost broken it 3 times today. See, it's easier if it just stays on your side of the house. Because then once we move it is when it falls over.
I'm ready, Craig.
Okay, I'm going to play the music. Anthony, you got to give it a nice spin. The way it's currently configured when I literally bent the metal with my hands. Yeah, you got to give it a nice chuck. Come on, be costume show. Oh, it's got the 100 push-ups. Oh. You'll hate to see it. This really sucks because I kind of, on almost any other week, I'd be like, yeah. One, we're about to be on the end of the show, so we can't have you do them right now because we need you to pick games.
Yeah.
2, you're not feeling the best, so I don't necessarily want to make you do that right now. So Anthony, I'm gonna offer you a deal. If I get 2 of the glasses bits, will you just do the costume show with me on Friday when we pick the NBA?
Hell yeah.
Okay. So I very much am hoping that next week when, if I win, that you do 100 push-ups because I do want to see you do 100 push-ups. But the idea of us picking NFL games, wrapping up our week on a Friday, looking like absolute buffoons is kind of too good to pass up.
Yes, sir.
And considering the wheel is supposed to be a wheel of mediocre punishment, not a wheel of actual like humiliating punishment, it actually is kind of perfect.
I think it fits.
Okay, so Anthony and I see how this Apple Intelligence works. Hey Siri. Whoa, that's my camera. I don't want that. Oh, I gotta hit that button. Hey Siri, remind me at 6:03 p.m. order silly costumes off of Amazon. Okay, it did it. It just didn't talk back. All right, thanks, Siri. Thanks for being a mute today. All right. Time to pick games. You ready?
Born ready, baby.
All right. Let's get into it.
Let's get it.
By the way, this slate of games, it'll wind up being entertaining because it's the NFL and it always works out. This slate of games sucks. Like the 1 o'clock slate is terrible.
Horrible.
Which blows because this is the week that I should be able to sit on my ass and watch football and because I don't have to care about the Commanders because they're on a bye.
Yeah.
Roger, I'm taking this personally. What is wrong with you people? Ugh. Okay. What do I want to do? What do I want to do? Because there's also not a ton of like huge lines this week.
Nope. There's one though.
There's one, but do I want to take it? Yeah, I'm just gonna take the double-digit line and deal with it. Even though this team that's on the quote-unquote right side of the line, the favorite here, has been absolutely smashing teams. Actually, you want to know what? No, I'm not. I'm going to go Monday Night Football first. If you want that big line, I'm going to let you take it. If not, I'm probably going to take it next. So, let me see what the line is actually moved to now because I have these lines from Monday in the spreadsheet because that's when we do the first impression selection show, which you can watch on YouTube. It's me. It's Tony Squares. It's a good time. Monday Night Football is the Bengals and the Cowboys. Oh, yes, I get an even better number. That makes this really easy. The Cincinnati Bengals are favored by 5. I don't think the Cowboys defense is good. I think the Bengals offense is incredible. And so I'm going to take Cincinnati minus the 5. Big number, don't care. They should win by 2 touchdowns.
Okay. I will not have anything to add to that. 425. I hate that I'm doing this, but San Fran minus 4. I want to take the Bears plus the 4.
That's a good pick.
Yes, sir.
I do think that Chicago is ripe for, like Thomas Brown, I think has a lot more respect in that room than Matt Eberflus. They were losing games close with Flus there. So covering, I mean, that would suck if they lost another one close, but like I don't think it would go down the same as previous. Yeah, I'm just going to do it. Screw it. There's one double-digit line on the board this weekend. Double-digit lines have not really been a thing that favorites have covered mostly this year, unless it's like the Lions. Although I am scared that the Philadelphia Eagles can beat the Carolina Panthers by a lot. The Panthers have been frisky as hell. They should have beaten Tampa last week, and they're 12.5-point dogs. Give me Carolina plus 12.5. Why? Because it's plus 12.5.
I like that pick as well. Not gonna lie, really like it.
Picking underdogs is makes you feel better because you got the cushion built in.
Yeah, I'm not going to take an underdog here. I will be taking the Steelers. I did this before, and I lost, actually. But I think they'll bounce back. Steelers, minus 6.5 over the Browns. Steelers defense got to bounce back, man. They got to. Got to.
See, this...
And they lost to the Browns already this season.
They did. It's just a division game, and I'm kind of on a, hey, avoid big spreads in division games. But there's a chance. There's a chance. See if Jameis made his deal with whoever it needs to make to swear off pick sixes.
Yeah.
Last but not least for me, I kind of hate that game. Do I want to do that one? That game's a nightmare.
What about the game tomorrow?
I could just bet against. I mean, so here's the thing about Thursday Night Football tomorrow is that both teams are on a full week of rest. It's not your usual Thursday nighter, and I don't know what to do with it. Part of me is just take Green Bay because it's plus 3.5, and if they lose by a field goal, I'm good. But Detroit has murdered some people. If they get a couple of turnovers, I think it get wild. This is terrible radio, but this is real consternation. I do this every week, and then I go 3-0. So if it happens, why stick with the formula? I'm going to bet on a terrible football team. The New York Giants are 4.5 point dogs. Or actually, what's the number?
5.
It's 5 now? Even better. The Saints don't deserve to be favored by 5 over anyone. Taysom Hill's out for the year. They stink. I get 5 points, and this game might end 5-0. A safety and a field goal. Sweet, I'll push. Give me the Giants.
You're taking the Giants? Okay.
When you say it out loud, it sounds very stupid, but I'm just going to take the Giants.
All right. Hey, look, I feel you on that. Last game for me, Craig.
Yep.
I will be taking Sunday Night Football, the Chargers.
This was another game that I thought about.
The 3.5.
That's a good pick.
You have it at 3.5?
I got it at 4 earlier in the week.
Oh.
Is it down to 3.5 now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 3.5. Anyway. Yeah, no, it is 3.5. The other games I was considering, the Tampa game.
I'm scared of that one.
The Arizona-Seattle game.
I think the Cardinals win that one.
Okay, it's 2.5. I'll take Seattle plus 2.5.
I'll take the Cards.
Okay.
Minus 2.5, Craig. Now what?
Tiebreak. Well, that's our tiebreaker.
I hope.
CH,
well, we know how I do.
Seattle. Yeah. So congrats to the Cardinals for winning. And that's it. Those are our picks. That's Competition Wednesday. Next Wednesday we'll see how we did. On Friday we're gonna look very silly while we pick games not against the spread, and that's that. Tomorrow on this silly radio show, we're broadcasting live from Capital One Arena, so that'll be fun. Ahead of Mavs and Wizards, maybe the Wizards will win. That would be cool. Maybe we should have like Josh Robbins or somebody stop by and talk about what the hell's going on with that team. So we'll do that tomorrow. See you then on the Hoffman Show.